If you're looking for a podcast that packs in sound property advice, as well as offering you an insight into making the world of property effective and ultimately work for you, you're in the right place. Hosted by Arsh, the original property rebel. He's written an Amazon bestseller, created the Property Investor app, the UK's first, and is an experienced property mentor. More importantly, he talks the talk and walks the walk.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of The Property Rebel with your host Arsh. And in today's session we're going to be looking at the pros and cons of the strategy serviced accommodation. We'll be looking at what is serviced accommodation, how to get involved, all the benefits and the negatives of the strategy. Before we do that, I want to say a quick hello to all listeners, whether you're new or old. Hopefully you're enjoying the session, hopefully you're enjoying the channel, and hopefully you've taken away so many golden tips from this podcast. So jumping straight into it, what is serviced accommodation? Best way that I describe it, it is pretty much like running a mini hotel or a mini Airbnb or guest house, shall we say it. With serviced accommodation, essentially, you let out the property on a short-term basis. So just imagine you're going on holiday. If you go on a holiday and you decide to book a hotel, you'll go there and you'll be stopping in that hotel room. Now, some people prefer to have a few more luxuries, almost like a home from home feel. And instead of stopping in a hotel where you stop in there with hundreds of people, you decide to book an apartment or even a house. It can be a house as well, where it is fully self-catering, but you've got your own privacy. You don't have the restaurants, you don't have the concierge services, etc. But the benefit of it is that with serviced accommodation, essentially you let the property out on a short-term basis. The difference with a buy-to-let is that you'll have a 6-month or a longer tenancy. However, with serviced accommodation, you're letting out the property for a shorter period of time. And this could be something as short as a night or one evening. It could be a couple of evenings. It could be part of a week. And depending on the clientele that you're pitching for, you could even attract workers or contract workers who could be there from Monday to Friday for the next few months. And I'll go through an example with that. Now, I'm going to talk about an experience that I've got a serviced accommodation unit. I haven't got loads. If I'm honest, I've only got one serviced accommodation unit. And I was kind of against this strategy, and I don't mind sharing that. And the reason why I say that is because when I looked at the strategy, I thought, is this now a property strategy or is this a business strategy? Because in essence, where you're looking at it, you're setting up a new style of business. In essence, you're setting up a mini guest house. So guests have to check in. Then you've got, once the guests have checked out, you've then got to go in and you've got to do all the cleaning and you've got to change the linen, which means that you've got to arrange companies to come and change the linen and everything around that. And then not only that, with a normal tenancy, really, they move in and they may be there 1 month, 2 months, 6 months. The average tenancy length is 6 months, and then after 6 months they leave. And you don't really, other than rent collection and perhaps some maintenance issues, you don't really have to do a lot with buy-to-let. However, with serviced accommodation, because you're now in the serviced sector, there's a hell of a lot more that goes with it. So once they check in, you check on them, they've been there for one night, then you go back in there tomorrow, you get it cleaned out, you get it ready, you've got the cleaning team, you've got the maintenance team, go in there, check that everything's okay, and then they've got to make sure that the property's ready for the next check-in. So the lucrative thing about serviced accommodation is the fact that your charge, the rental fees, your charge for a shorter term let will be substantially higher than if you're using the property for serviced accommodation than what you would do as if you're renting it out as an AST. I'll give you an example. Let's just imagine a flat in the town centre of Birmingham city centre. So an average flat would rent out for a 1-bed flat would be about $550 a month. However, if you list it on booking sites like Airbnb, Booking.com, let's just use the two main ones for now. the average rent or the average charge or fees you can charge per night is roughly around £100. £100 per night. So if you work on very basic figures at £100 per night, if it was to be fully let, so let's just say 5 weeks out of 5 nights out of the 7, that's £500 a week, which when you calculate it over a year, that's £26,000 a year. Whereas your standard single let would have been generating £6,000 based on £500 a month. However, coming out of that cost, you've now got to take out your mortgage if you own the property. You've then got to take out any service charge, ground rents because it's associated with a flat and leasehold. As well as that, you've now got to take out booking costs. So Airbnb and Booking.com, they do charge fees for their service. Some of them are quite high. So I think Airbnb, off memory, don't quote me on this because I'm not huge on service accommodation. I think Airbnb is around 3%. I think Booking.com is quite high in comparison. It may be within the region of 15 to 17%. So they're quite high. However, taking into consideration the amount that you're going to be generating. Now, one thing I will say is that there's a downfall with the strategy, is that with a normal tenancy, you know that once a tenant's in there, technically speaking, they should be paying the rent for the next 6 months. So you've got kind of an assurance that 6 months, that rent's being paid. However, with serviced accommodation, you're working on a booking by booking basis. I'd like to think that you can have bookings for the next few months. However, if you've got a booking today and you don't have a booking tomorrow, or you're pretty much reliant on people seeing your advert and making a booking. So it's an interesting one. The way that I see it really is that if I'm honest, I'm not a big fan of the strategy. And the reason being is that you can't kind of calculate your cash flow for the month or the forthcoming months, because unless you've got bookings for well in advance, that's great. But remember that bookings can easily be cancelled as well. So with an AST, they can't just come out of the AST in 6 months and say, sorry, I want to leave. You're bound by a contract. With service accommodation, you're not really bound by that contract. You can charge, some cancellation fees, etc., but you can't charge them for the whole period that they're there. So giving an example, someone tries to, if you've booked a room or you booked the service accommodation unit for next week, and you've got a cancellation policy that 24 hours, anything up to 24 hours before you cancel, your fees will be returned. You may have booked that out, and then, let's say that I was meant to stop there on Tuesday. On Sunday evening, I decide to cancel it. Now, as a service accommodation operator, I've kind of lost all that money, which means that now I've either got an empty unit or I've got to reduce the price of that unit to try and get it let again. And I suppose that's probably one of the benefits of service accommodation. You can increase and you can reduce your rates according to the demand that you've got. Now, normally on service accommodation, most people will try and hike their rates on the weekend depending on the location. So if you're in a main city centre, so Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, London, etc., because it's going to get a lot more traffic on the weekend, they'll hike the rates on the weekend. And then during the week, they may reduce them to attract the contractors or the people visiting the city for business purposes. So the way that I look at it, it's more of a business strategy than a property strategy. I've said this from the outset. It's pretty much like running a B&B. An alternative name would be a holiday let, as they are very similar. You set it up like a hotel, you furnish it, and you have to maintain it and keep it clean. Because remember, you've got to maintain it at a high level, because if someone turns up and they don't like the standard of the accommodation, or they find that it's not clean, they're going to leave you a negative review on places like TripAdvisor, Expedia, etc. Now, putting yourself in the shoe of the person looking to book a unit or look to book a flat or a room, etc. What's the first thing that you do before you book a place? Do you read the reviews? Now, I know that when my wife books our holidays, etc., we always look at what the reviews, what have previous guests said. And if there's negative reviews, chances are that we're not going to go there. There's a very high percentage that we're not going to go there. So this business, this sector is very much catered around making sure the guest has the best possible experience to ensure that you get the best possible reviews. Now, going back to my experience, so someone approached me about a property in Cornwall and they said, Arsh, do you want to buy this property? And at the time, they were offering it me to buy it below market value. At the time, I had no intention of buying a property in Cornwall because my strategy is to buy within an hour's distance of Wolverhampton. So I thought, no, not for me. And I thought about it. I thought, well, perhaps I can use this as a second family home. I've always liked the thought of having a second family home. I've always liked the thought of being close to the beach and the sea. I thought this could create a real win-win scenario. So I started speaking to the owner. I said, okay, I'm not interested in buying it, but potentially would you consider a long-term rent or could we structure it as a lease option? Over a few calls, now the guy's based in Tokyo, the property's in Cornwall, and his reason for wanting to do something like this was the fact that he gave it to a managing agent. The managing agent were being very cooperative with when it was let, when it wasn't let, so he had no real indication as to what was going on. So I offered him guaranteed rent solution. We've done it on a 10-year basis. 10-year basis where next 10 years, come rain, sleet or shine, he's guaranteed his rent. Now, I looked at it from a point of view is that I know what the rents that I've got to pay to the landlord, and then off the back of that, I've got to make sure that that property is occupied sufficient enough times in the month in order to pay the outgoings. So my outgoings is a rent, my outgoings is also the electricity, gas, broadband, water rates, business rates. One thing I should say for service accommodation, it should be business rates because you are running it like a business, not council tax. Council tax is generally cheaper than business rates. And as well as that, then you've got your cleaning and everything else. So let's just say that, and so what we've done is that it's in a prime holiday destination. So we're in Cornwall, it's in an area called Porthtowan, which is literally, and the property is literally 200 metres away from the beach. So it's perfect from what we wanted from a lifestyle point of view. I just had to make sure from a business point of view, it ticked all the boxes. We've got enough bookings to cover the outgoings because the last thing I wanted is another house just sat empty in a location that I know nothing about. So we did some research, we spoke to lots of places, and we got it up on Airbnb, we got it on booking.com, we've got our own website. So by all means, if you want to have a check out, if you want to check it out, it's tincroftcottage.co.uk. Feel free to book it if you like. And off the back of that, you'll see that we've got a phenomenal home down there. We've got a phenomenal second home. As we record this, I'm actually going there tomorrow. So when you're listening to this, and if it's on the Tuesday, I will actually be in Cornwall, hopefully sitting on the beach. So with service accommodation, the way that I try and do it, I try and work out what my occupancy rate is, and I try and work out what my break-even point is. Now, lots of people put their break-even point they put their occupancy rate at between 70 to 75% because they believe that it's going to be occupied between 70 and 75% of the time. Now, for me, I think that's quite a risky strategy. Because there's so many factors taken into consideration. You've got to look at how many other apartments are available. How are you pricing yourself? I try and work my occupancy rate as low as possible, even to the point where it's circa 30 to 40%. Because I know that in a month, if it's occupied 30% of the time, which is approximately 10 days, a third of the month, then if nothing else, at 30%, if it's not breaking even, it's not really for me. Now, other people are calculating their occupancy at circa 70 to 80%. Let's say 75% of the time. They need it occupied. They need it out of the 30 days, they need it occupied quite a lot in order for it to break even. That, for me, is too scary. Now, just to give you an example, going back to my point in Cornwall, we've got two kind of peaks. So bear in mind that it is a holiday destination. So it's a holiday home. We're going to be busy in the summer. We're going to be dead in the winter. So we have to we have to do our rates accordingly. In the summer, we charge an average £2,000 a week. So I need to try and make sure that I know what my outgoings are for the whole year. And I try and break my calculator. So I want to make enough money in the summer so that it covers the whole year plus generate a profit. So that's how I work with the holiday lets. With the apartments in the city centre, I can imagine that won't be, they're pretty much a trickle effect throughout the year, so they're going to get bookings throughout. But I know that in Cornwall, from circa May, maybe even earlier than from April, all the way down to pretty much end of October, is pretty busy, almost full all the time. Other than that, you'll from November, you'll struggle in November, December, around Christmas time and New Year time, you might get some bookings. January, February, March, you may get the odd weekend here or there. But the big chunk of it is between April and October. So that's where we have to make as much as we can. So that was my experience of service accommodation, and it works really well. I'll be honest, it works really well. More so from our point of view, it's a lifestyle thing. It's not a business thing. As long as it washes itself, that's the key thing for me. So in essence, I've got a free second home. I go there when I like. I book it out when we like. We go there, we enjoy it. We're by the sea, we're by the sun. My daughters get to escape the havoc of the city and give them that country lifestyle, and it works really well. With all of service accommodation, like I said, it needs to be fully maintained. The one thing that I'm a little bit conscious of with service accommodation is that if you have got lots of apartments in a city, or you've got lots of units, you may be creating yourself another job. The reason being is that check-in, check-outs, dealing with customers, issues, and you will get some issues. Some people contact you and when they've checked in and said, oh, this isn't right, or that isn't right, or this place needs doing up, etc. And you can't purchase a service accommodation unit with a buy-to-let mortgage. Chances are that you have to go and get a specific service accommodation mortgage. There are not loads out there. There are some out there, and you need to speak to a broker about what's the best one, especially if you're looking to use that unit as a service accommodation unit. I know there's lots of people out there that have done extremely well from service accommodation, but that you do have to be a lot more hands-on. For me, it's a strategy which is good to have probably 1 or 2 units. It's not something that I'd probably look to go full-time in. The one thing I would say about service accommodation is that because you're consistently maintaining it, because you're consistently cleaning it as well, you will have a very nice and clean property portfolio. Because if you don't keep it up to date, if you don't keep it clean, chances are that you're not going to get those bookings. Now, just give me an example, HMOs. Now, everyone that's got HMO, at some point they start to look a little bit clean, a little bit tired, like the communal areas need clean up, etc. Whereas they don't get as maintained as well as a service accommodation. So from our service accommodation is immaculate, and it really is a beautiful place to visit. So these are the pros and cons that I would take away from service accommodation. It can be very lucrative. Just to give you an example, that we charge £2,000 a week. I know that other people, so you've got lots of different types types of clients when it comes to service accommodation. So you could have holiday makers, you could have stag do's and hen weekends. So if you're in a good location like Newcastle, or you've got a main city like Birmingham, Newcastle, Liverpool, Manchester, London, on the weekend you may get stag do's or hen do's. Chances are that you may have some issues with that, and that's one of the cons about service accommodation. Chances are that you're going to have to deal with some rowdy clients, or you're going to have some neighbours or some other guests who are unhappy because there's been a group of lads, and I'm not stereotyping here, that there's been a group of lads out there and they stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning playing loud music because they're on a hen do or they're on a stag do. That's what they do. It's the same with a hen party. Then you've got the corporate clients. You've got the guys that probably come in Monday to Friday whilst they're working in the city, and then they go home to their families Saturday and Sunday, where then you can then let it out to the hen do's, stag do's, and people visiting the city. Then you've got your holiday makers. So all these are all dependent on the location. All depends on the demand and the location. Now, down in Cornwall, I won't get stag do's and hen do's. We're predominantly a surfer location, so we get lots of groups of surfers, we get walkers, so we try and pitch it. So in the summer we get the surfers, in the winter, because we're in quite a hilly location, we kind of get the walkers. We're not going to get stagnant Hindus. We're not going to get the corporate guys. So you've got to know your market, and that's the key thing, because then you can price accordingly. You know, if you're in a city like Wolverhampton, has got lots of work going on around it. So we've got lots of contractors. So between Monday and Friday, if I was to run a service accommodation unit, I would be looking to house the contractors during the week. So if you could speak to the company and say, guys, how long are you here for? They may turn around and say, well, Arsh, we've got a contract here for 6 months. So their options are, do they stop in a hotel for the next 6 months? Or can we try and house these guys for the next 6 months on an Airbnb style basis and make some decent money? They've got a good level of accommodation, and it's a win-win. They save money, we make money, and it really wins off that basis. So there we have it, guys. Lots to think about service accommodation. You either love it or you hate it. It's like Marmite. For me, it's not something that I would do on a full-time basis. I think it's far too time intensive. However, I understand that it is quite lucrative. I see it more as a business opportunity as opposed to a property strategy. With service, one thing I should mention is with service accommodation, as with any property other strategy, you don't always have to buy the property. You can take it on a rent-to-rent basis or a lease option basis and then run it. You just got to ensure that the landlord's got the correct insurances. You've got to check that the landlord's got consent from the management company and the freeholder for their consent, especially if it's apartments in a block, because there are lots of freeholders clamping down on it. So it can be very lucrative. It comes with its issues, as with every property strategy it does. But hopefully you've taken away a lot of notes from that. Any questions, feel free to reach out to me. As always, you can contact me on social media by searching Arsh Elahi. All you got to do is go to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and find Arsh Elahi. If you like more free education, you can also visit my YouTube channel, again by searching Arsh Elahi. We release a new video every Thursday, roughly around 4 p.m. And we've got over 200 videos on my YouTube channel, giving away free content. So if you like the thought of that, go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get notified every time I release something. Finally, if you're still looking for deals, and we do sell service accommodation deals, believe it or not, because it is still something that property investors are looking for, why don't you download the Property Investor app? So it's the UK's first property investment marketplace, which showcases all kinds of property investment deals all over the UK. So if you like rent-to-rent deals, you like lease option deals, you like service accommodation, below market value, commercial to residential, industrial, land, so and so forth, we've got all the deals for you there. All you have to do is go to the App Store and type in propertyinvestораpp.co.uk. Sorry, go to the website, type in propertyinvestораpp.co.uk, or go to the App Store, so iOS and Android, and type in Property Investor. You'll have all the deals in the palm of your hand. It's completely free to download the app, and they're there for you to view. So on that note, guys, I wish you all the very best of success, and hopefully you stay well. And I will speak to you all very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
The large majority of people make a positive change if they take immediate action. So act now. Download the Property Investor app and join Arsh on his social media channels to excel your property journey.